Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for your blessings in my life. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for your kindness towards me. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for your faithfulness in my life. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for your love in my life. I thank you, glorious God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for your faithfulness to me. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for your loving heart to me. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for giving me your joy. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for wiping away my tears. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for renew your joy in me. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for glorify your holy name in me. Thank you, God, I'm grateful. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for being my Lord and God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for my husband and my children. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for all my family. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for all of us people of the world. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for giving us life to live. I'm grateful, God, in Jesus Christ's name. Thank you, God, for your love to us. Thank you, God, our God. Thank you, God, our God. Thank you, God, for your faithfulness to us. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for keeping us alive today. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for your provisions for us. Thank you, God, for the sun and moon. Thank you, God, for all the stars. Thank you, God, for surrounding us by your holy light. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for the sea and the oceans. Thank you, God, for the rivers all over the world. Thank you, God, for provide all I need. Thank you, God, for all the flowers of the field. Thank you, God, for all the trees in the wood. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for your provisions for us. Thank you, God, for the fruits. Thank you, God, for the nuts for us to eat. I thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for all the harps on the air. I thank you, God, for the giraffe. I thank you, God, for the pelican. I thank you, God, for your beautiful flowers. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for your love to us. Thank you, God, for all the elephants. Thank you, God, for the plants on the air. Thank you, God, for providing all our needs. Thank you, God, for giving us joy on earth. Thank you, God, for the way that swim in the sea. Thank you, God, for all the beautiful fish. I'm grateful, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for the waters of the sea. I thank you, God, for the rain that cools us. Thank you, God, for your blessings in our life. Thank you, God, for the beautiful birds that sing for us and give us joy on earth. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for the joy you give to us. I thank you, God, for giving us life. Thank you, God, for sustaining us till today. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for your blessings in our life. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for the butterflies of the field. Thank you, God, for the beautiful butterflies. Thank you, God, for all the flowers on the field. I thank you, God, for the innumerable plants. Thank you, God, for all the animals you give to us. Thank you, God, for the giraffe you give me. Thank you, God, for all the zebras that beautiful the world. I'm grateful, God. Day by day, you sustain us and give us all joy on earth. I thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for your gracious in our life. I thank you, God, for innumerable acts. Thank you, God, for unnumbered animals on earth. I thank you, God, for the insects and the plants. Thank you, God, for your miraculous creations. Thank you, God, for the viruses that bless us. Thank you, God, for your wonders on the earth. Thank you, God, for our life. Thank you, God, for everything. Thank you, God, for your graciousness to us. Thank you, God, for giving us your Son, Jesus Christ. Thank you, God, for giving us your Son. I thank you, God, your love for all, your redeeming power is great in our life. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for giving us your Son, Jesus Christ. Thank you, God, for everything.